Hi guys, in this video we're looking at congruent figures, and another word for congruency is identical. So we're looking and comparing two shapes or two objects that are exactly the same in every manner. The slightest difference would then mean that they aren't congruent, and to identify that one object is congruent or identical to another, we use a symbol that looks like an equal sign but with a third line underneath. So that means congruency, okay? Now, we have two triangles here, and in this case, we've got triangle A, B, and C. And we've got the two triangles, we've got another triangle P, R, Q, but what I want to emphasize here that the order of the letters of P, R, and Q really depends on the order that we have stated in the first shape that we're comparing it with. So here we have A, B, and C. So that's the order that we're taking this triangle. And what I'd like you to do is always find out which of these points correspond to these points in this second diagram. So we can look at this long skinny corner. The R corresponds to this point C. Okay, so another word for point is vertex or corner. Then the second thing is, I guess, which of A and B corresponds to P and Q. And looking at this, I can say that A corresponds to P and B corresponds to Q. So what I want to write down is that A is corresponding with P. So that's the first letter for the second triangle. B corresponds with Q. And then C corresponds with R. So the way that we actually label this second triangle is in this order, P, Q, and R, because that is the order that we have dictated from A, B, and C. Even though visually they are the same triangle, it's important that the order that we phrase it is the same. And what we want to state here is that these two triangles are identical. They are congruent. So we've got those three lines there in between the two statements. Now, in order to prove that they are congruent, I guess we're wanting to have some evidence, okay? And there are some things that we can have a look here. We've also got some values that we don't know. We don't know what Z is. We don't know what Y is. We don't know what M is. So we got some questions here. We also don't know what X is. But because we have matched the letters in the correct order, we can actually fill in the gaps through what we see. Okay, so for example, A and P, okay, are these 2 points here, all right? And the way that we've got an angle X that we don't know, that angle there, so if we say, if we want to know what X is equal to, we can basically look at the corresponding angle in this diagram and see that it should equal 65 degrees. If they are different, then the triangles aren't congruent. Same thing with Y. Okay, looking at Y on this side, this corresponds to B. So we could say that Y is equal to 80 degrees. And then lastly, we've got Z that we don't know in terms of angles. And that corresponds to this angle here, which should equal 35 degrees. Okay, so what we're doing is we're identifying these unknown values, X, Y, and Z. We do have one more, which is a side length, which is M. And M, we can say that corresponds to 5, which is over here. Don't know if you are aware of this, but you can see these little dashes, and what they signify is the sides that are the same in length. So one dash is the same as this side length, which also has one dash. This length here between Q and R has two dashes. That is going to be the same as BC, has two dashes. Then the same thing here, RP has three dashes, AC has three dashes. So what we could do is we could have a couple of other statements here. Just to be a little bit more technical of how we phrase it, how we write it mathematically. And instead of just X, Y, Z, and M, we want to actually put in a few more technical details just to make it a little bit more consistent with how things are phrased with future chapters and the ongoing years of mathematics. So angle X over here is in that vertex or the corner of A. But if we follow where the 2 points that it meets, so the sides B and A, so BAC, that creates that angle. All right, so there's the start, there's the middle, there's the end. So BAC, angle BAC is equal to, all right, and remember B corresponds to Q, so it corresponds to QPR. So QPR is the same angle as BAC. Remember, the order and sequence matter. So starting with B, which corresponds to Q, moving up to P, which corresponds to A, and then finishing with C, which corresponds to R. Okay, so there's our technical phrase here. We're saying that angle BAC, which is 65 degrees, is the same as angle QPR. We could do the same thing with Y. Okay, so Y is over here. This is in that corner, and we're wanting to look at which two lines actually makes up that angle. And so we've got PQR. And it doesn't really matter if you have RQP, you just need to make sure that the start, direction, and finish matches with the other triangle or other figure that you're comparing it with. So in this case, I'm going to say angle PQR is the same as, and in this case, it is going to be, remember P corresponds with A, so but Q, we're starting with, so we'll start with P, so P and A, so we want angle A. Q corresponds with B, and then the R corresponds with C. So angle PQR is the same as the angle ABC, and we already know from what we solved before, that's 80 degrees. The third angle Z is made up from the lines of P, R, and Q. So it's not PQR, that's PQR is Y, but PRQ is Z. So you can see how the order that you phrase those letters actually matter. So we've got angle PRQ, which is a different direction, is going to correspond with angle ACB. And that is 35 degrees. Lastly, if we're wanting to make a statement to compare the two lengths or side lengths of a figure that is the same, in this case, instead of M, we could say QP. So QP, that refers to a side, is the same as this side here. Is it now BA or AB? Now that is 5 centimeters, that is 5 centimeters, but remember we're starting with Q. Q corresponds with B, so we want to make sure that we start with B, and then move on to A. Okay, and in brackets we could say that they are both 5 centimeters. So hopefully that helps you with congruent figures, making sure that they are identical. Key takeaway is that you need to make sure that you are corresponding the correct angle, the correct side, with both of the figures that you're, I guess, analyzing. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll see you in the next video.